Hello and welcome to Pro Trader Strategies Market Commentary for Wednesday, July the 22nd. I'm Eric Wilkinson, and yes, you very well may recognize me from mainstream media where I've talked about the economic data, the geopolitical environment, and how that impacts the overall markets with my market analysis. And I do the same thing in these daily market commentaries, but I go a bit further and layer on top of it option strategies I find on any given day based on those market analysis that I come up with. We find a bullish or bearish assumption. I've got marbles in my mouth. And then I find an option strategy based on the environment around that underlying, the most appropriate option strategy for our given assumption. So watch the daily market commentaries because I go into those option strategies a little bit, but more importantly, check out my webinars where I really drill down on those option strategies and the guidelines we need to follow in order to implement any given option strategy around an assumption. So please check those out. Roadmap to Option Strategies is the course we're doing right now. So you can find that at protraderstrategies.com and sign up for tomorrow's webinar that we'll be doing on one of these option strategies. So check that out. Also, without further ado, let's get on with the economic data. Across the pond, not a whole lot to see there. We did get a lot of Canadian data, but who cares about the Canadian data? It's not really a major impactor. They did come out better than expected on their CPI or Consumer Price Index numbers, so we can go that far. Then we got the here in the United States, existing home sales came in slightly worse than expected by about 50,000 units, but it came in at 4,720,000 units, expected to be 4,777,000 units. So slightly lower than expected, no revision to last month's number. We are in the heart of the summer selling season for homes. So that's why we're seeing that ramp up from 4 million to 4.7. Also, crude oil inventory is coming in at a build of almost 5 million barrels, expected to be a drawdown of around 2 million barrels. That's causing a little bit of weakness over here in crude oil. That $40 a handle still holding on strong, which we're going to have to keep an eye on that because, I've talked about it. You get up above $40 a barrel, and I think that you're taking in too much demand in the future to be coming into this. The manufacturing sectors here and across the pond are not really ramping up that quickly. As a matter of fact, we're starting to see some ramping up and then pulling back. Another thing we're going to be seeing is we're heading into the school season where we are going to be sending kids back to school. Well, some of those kids aren't going back to school, and they're going to be going to school from home. And how does that impact the overall workforce for people that actually have to go to work and would have to leave somebody behind? Excuse me. So that is going to be an interesting, very interesting dynamic coming into the school into the fall there. So without further ado, we've talked about crude oil slightly off on the day, but still holding on to 40s. Bonds moving up by a half point today and holding on to that 180 handle. We talked about that volume node, not quite making it there, but we're starting to see some increase in volume up and around this 180 handle. So price acceptance on volume means transaction. Time volume, we've already gotten there. We talked about that paradigm moving higher, which is price acceptance right there at that level I've been talking about for weeks. So it finally moved up there, actually months now, since this whole pandemic started. I talked about that was going to be the level we were going to kind of hold on to for the foreseeable future. Well, we're seeing even the Fed governors talking about that market accepting that level as well right now. Then we move over to gold futures, and we talked about this yesterday when we started breaking higher there. It looked those all-time highs were going to be tested right around 1925, 23 I think is the actual number. So market's starting to move there. Shorts have got to be on their heels right now and starting to worry. So I don't believe we've gotten that pop to get those guys out. I think we could start marching towards that, especially into next week as we're continuing to see the dollar get weakened. We're also talking about another round of stimulus, which means more money coming into the system, weakening that overall dollar, and a flight to safety for those gold bugs is in the precious metal here. So gold still moving higher again today, up by about 20 points right now. And then VIX is starting to get a little bit choppy here as we're seeing VIX just slightly higher, holding on to 20s. You know, 20s are the new teens in the VIX, it seems. That is kind of like the low area it wants to hold on to, despite the fact that we're seeing equities here in the Dow Jones Industrial Average up 80 points on the day, just slightly higher than the point of control. One thing to note is we are getting very close to seeing the 200-day moving average and the 50-day moving average cross back over, which is a longer-term bullish trend. Now, I've talked about the fact of the matter that we are moving in and around these points of control. Looks like we should have this point of control for the volume moving up lockstep to 26,800. I don't know why right now it doesn't look like it's there, but it is very close to being a paradigm shift higher, which is also an indication of price being accepted higher, means that price could continue to move higher. All right, now the NASDAQ is unchanged right now, and this is again that whole theory that I've been talking about, that we've seen these stay-at-home stocks, the tech sector, just knock it out of the park since the pandemic. Rightfully so, don't get me wrong, but there are other markets out there that have really been lagging. FANGs have been really driving this market as well, including with Microsoft, which we get out earnings for tonight, and I'll talk about that here in a little bit. But all of those stocks have really been driving this market higher. Therefore, it looks to me like it's ready to maybe consolidate, roll over a little bit as the rest of like the E-mini S&Ps and the Dow Jones start moving in a more positive or sideways, and then the NASDAQ starts rolling over back as people take profit and put money into those other sectors there. So NASDAQ slightly in negative territory right now. E-mini S&Ps positive, just albeit slightly. It's struggling to really gain any momentum, you guys, once we get outside of these value areas, as you can see here, where 70% of the time and volume has been spent within this range. Point of control much lower here. We do have that same crossover I was mentioning in the Dow Jones happen earlier last week, where that is a longer-term bullish trend there for the E-mini S&Ps. Now we break it down into the daily chart. Overnight, pretty wild ride. One thing to note, to get this market a little bit of a boost higher, was the fact that Pfizer and the U.S. government basically coming up with the U.S. government giving Pfizer and BioNTech about $2 billion to produce doses of an experimental coronavirus that would produce like 1 million doses, okay? And what the U.S. government's trying to do is make these vaccines for U.S. and make it basically free to get this vaccine. So they've secured 100 million, and they have the option to acquire 50 million more doses, and that would allow U.S. citizens to get that virus basically for free. That's going into trial, but that did give a boost to the broader markets here in the E-mini S&Ps and the Dow Jones Industrial Average. All right, so let's talk about some earnings here. I guess I talked about Pfizer. Pfizer getting a nice move today. Know that I do have this stock in my portfolio, so glad to see that starting to make a move. In that, I have on the long 38 calls in there in the September. So longer duration, bought those calls because I felt that they were at the front runner or a front runner with this vaccine process. They're one of the juggernauts in there with this money that really kind of solidified them being one of the biggest players in the sector. So they've gotten a nice boost today up into that 38 handle like I talked about. I have long calls on. Been not doing too well on it until now. So now happy to see that getting up, my calls starting to go into the money on there for Pfizer. And then one thing I wanted to talk about, United Airlines did come out with earnings. Of course, they missed on earnings, which isn't surprising. But what was surprising is it was pretty much positive right on the news. Today, we're starting to see a little bit more sell-off. Not quite as much of a move than I would have expected here in United Airlines. Now, we have Southwest Airlines. The reason why I'm bringing up United Airlines is Southwest Airlines has got their earnings after the actually before the open tomorrow morning. So something I might be looking at there, despite the fact that they really missed on the headline number. They did give forward guidance that was pretty decent, I guess, trying to put a silver lining around the dismal flights that are going on and the dismal operations that they've been able to try to do. I think they had a ridiculous number that there's really just nobody flying. And I think that Southwest in this space, being one of the cheaper seat prices, might do a little bit better. But it could be something I'm going to be looking to play to the upside on that, because there's so much bad news out there already about these airline stocks that I don't think that we're going to see them really slough off. Now, Microsoft is something, has had that big move off of this pandemic and lockdown kind of tech sector rally that we've been seeing. Now, I think that this is justifiable. Microsoft is all about the home and what's going on around there. One thing I haven't mentioned, though, is they are involved in LinkedIn. And with as many people that are unemployed, LinkedIn is probably going to start seeing some demand and some more premium membership offerings. I think they'll talk about that in the earnings call. So that forward guidance, I think, will help propel them a little bit higher. Therefore, I'm going to be looking to sell some puts in Microsoft for today. Or actually for the afternoon. So after 3 o'clock Eastern's when I'll be looking to put something like that on. So keep your eyes out for Twitter. Also, Pfizer is what we talked about here, up nicely today. Yes, that does look a little bit scary with the Hangman Doji above everything else. So I'm going to keep an eye on this. I do think that they are going to at least trend sideways, and hopefully we get a bit of a volume node shift to the higher, and that would indicate bullishness in the future. So keeping an eye on Pfizer. Like I said, it finally went back into the money. It was a bit of a loser trade there for a while when I had to ride these out for that down trough. I thought we were going to get more of a move higher quicker, but it's finally starting to come in, and getting a little bit of volatility expansion today is helping me as well. So as you can see, when you're buying premium, you buy it in low volatility, you get that volatility start to increase a little bit. That helps us out even with our directional move. All right, so Pfizer, pretty happy with. Another one that we're looking at for Amazon, I'm probably not going to play Amazon. I just think that everybody is really ahead of Amazon. So if they kind of come in line with expectations or don't have a great earnings call, that we could really see this market start to shift a little bit to the downside. So I'm not going to play Amazon most likely, despite the fact that they have super high implied volatility. Check me out on Twitter. Like I said, that's going to be a game time decision there. And then Chipotle, I'm definitely not touching Chipotle or Tesla. Tesla has earnings too. I'm staying away. I promise you. I promise you, this is one ticker you will not see me punching out on Twitter, as Tesla is just knocking it out of the park lately. And so I'm not going to try to fade Tesla on any earnings, or probably even, I'm just going to stay away from it. All right, tying my hands from Tesla. All right, that's about it for you guys. Check out our disclaimer. We are an educational company. I'm not trying to solicit you guys to jump off the cliff with me. What I'm trying to do here is talk about how you and I come up with market assumptions. You know, I just talked you through how I came up with a Microsoft market assumption. And then what we do is we look at the minutia around Microsoft, what's going on there, the volatility, and finding out what is the right option strategy we need to implement by looking at volatility, the theta decay, and all of those things will help us determine what is the most appropriate option strategy for our assumption, okay? So it's not just going out there and picking something out of the hat. That doesn't work. What we need to do is set ourselves up for success. That's one of the only things that we can really do in trading, is setting ourselves up for success when we implement that strategy around our assumption, okay? And what I do is I try to break that down so that it's logical for you. Check that out at Pro Trader Strategies. Like I said, we're doing the webinar on the roadmap to implementing options. And what that does is it tells us, we come up with this assumption, we look at the underlying, and we go through this step-by-step process in order to find the right strategy, okay? So check it out. Really interesting twist on webinars I've done in the past, and we're trying to make it so that it's a little bit different for you. All right, so that's all I got for you, other than if you can't take that, take it easy.